Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Wrestling the Territories podcast. Tonight, we're going to talk about something a little bit different. We have covered tag teams and stuff recently, and so tonight, what I wanted to do was talk about two of these tag teams and what could have really been if these two tag teams had been able to had a longer feud, and it'd been great if they could had. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. Now, welcome to the show. So we're going to talk about Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard versus Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane, the Midnight Express. What a feud this could have been. I mean, honestly, it was only just maybe a month and a half or so, and it just started getting good. And I want to show you a video clip. And you'll be able to see the clip good, but you'll get an idea. And but just how the jawing back and forth, as I like to call it, and they had such chemistry together going into this feud, and it could have lasted longer. Unfortunately, Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson leaves the NWA to go to the WWF, and it just ends this thing abruptly. Now, Tully and Arn has issues with things going on, and pay being one of them. So they decide to leave. They do drop the titles to the Midnight Express, making the Midnight Express the first ever team to ever hold the U.S. and World Tag Team titles at the same time. And so, where that's history and that's great, the feud itself, I believe, could have made a ton of money. So, we're going to get into that, and we're going to do that in just a second. Okay, again, like I was saying, it's the back and forth, and the attacks by the Horsemen on Bobby Eaton in the locker room. But it really, there's an interview that happens with the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette that I want to play for you, and I think you're going to really like it if you've never heard this before. And we're going to get into more detail how this could have really made a ton of money.
You're going to stay down. 1, 2, and 3. And this one is history. Nobody's going to get up from that, Jim. Dude, we're just going to find out which is which. It's going to happen. The contract's been signed here. Oh, JJ, come on. Did you happen to get that package of contracts I sent you? I know it's already been signed, and I just want to say I'm really looking forward to this, James.
Jimmy. Don't you think this has gone just a little bit too far?
No, I think it could go maybe just one step further just as soon as those belts are around the waist of the Midnight Express instead of Tully and Arn. Not that we want to break up any friendships, because once we beat you for the belts, we're such sportsmen, we'll still be friends with you, I promise.
JJ, let me cut you off here for a minute. Bobby, Stan, we've traveled together, we've partied together, we've shared everything, and I mean everything together. Listen, be satisfied with what you got. Don't cut off your nose to spot your face. You don't need the World Tag Team titles.
Hey, what do you mean we don't need them? Let me tell you something. It's about time we got some big paydays too around here. I think we want a title shot. What about that? That's right, you don't need them. One thing being a world champion takes intelligence. It takes good looks. You have to be articulate because of the media coverage that you get. And you take about, you can't even talk. Look at this guy right here. You can't even have a walking function of the United States.
Let me tell you something, Tully Blanchard. You put your finger back in my face, or only I'm going to make you eat, you punk. You piece of garbage, you piece of trash. That's all you are. You piece of trash. You piece of junk.
You better watch yourself. Yeah. Hey, let me just tell you something, JJ. We beat everybody else except you. But it's hard to beat somebody when you ain't never had a match with them. You just remember that, friend.
All right, again, I mean, that was a heck of an interview. That was on NWA Worldwide or Pro. I'm sorry, it's on NWA Pro, and I mean, you talk about a good setup. So you have two heel tag teams, the Midnight Express and the Four Horsemen. And the thing is, it's trying to. I think they were trying to fill out to see which the fans were going to like a little better, but they start to push the Midnight Express as the faces a little more. And I think that was a wise move because the Horsemen, they're really your top heel, so they really needed to stay heels. And so the Midnight Express, they get attacked. What happens is Bobby Eaton gets attacked in the locker room by Arn Anderson and Tully and Rick and JJ and Barry. And the thing is, you don't see the attack, but you see the aftermath of the attack. and this just adds on to the fuel that's already got going on over that fire. But the thing it is, um, it starts out with just the Midnight Express challenging the Horsemen for the tag team titles. And the Horsemen, as you heard in that interview there, said, just settle for what you got. You're fine as U.S. tag team champions. Well, they were not happy with that. They want to be the world tag team champions. And honestly, like I say, this could have went much further than it did. And it only lasted maybe a month and a half because, like I said, Tully and Arn were ready to go. They went to WWF. I really believe they were trying to set this up to be a Starcade main event. One of the two main events for Starcade being Lex Luger and Ric Flair for the world belt, and it'd have been a hell of a matchup between the Midnight Express and Tully and Arn for the world tag team titles. I mean, it could have made a cage match out of it. I mean, it could have really been some serious money. People would have wanted to see these in house shows that were going on. Honestly, I really believe that it would have made a ton of money. And unfortunately, it never came to pass. So, I mean, booking it was a smart move. You had you had the Rock and Roll Express; they were done and gone. The Fantastics and the Midnight Express had a feud earlier in the year; they were done with that. And the Horsemen really didn't have a major feud. I mean, you had Lex Luger and Barry Windham against Tully and Arn at the beginning of the year. Then Barry turns on Lex to become a Horseman, and so they really don't have a big feud going on. So they do end up with some matches with Sting and Nikita Koloff during the Great American Bash, which are not too bad. But I think if maybe the Road Wars would have been a better feud to have like picked up from Starrcade '87. But this was absolutely going to be a huge, huge matchup between these two teams, and you'd have seen. I mean, if it would have went on through Starrcade and maybe the beginning of the year, um, it would have been really good. Now I know that the original Midnight Express comes in, so Tully and Arn are gone, so Midnight Express has to have a feud going on. So they lose the World Tag belts to the Road Warriors, and so they don't hold the tag belts too long, it's maybe a month. And then they start the feud with the original Midnight Express and kind of solidify their face turn completely at that point and stay face through the better part of '89 until they turn on the Dynamic Dudes, Johnny Ace and Shane Douglas, which was a horrible tag team. But anyway, because they were advised by Jim Cornette, then Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express turned on them and went back heels again, and then ended up with a feud with the Rock and Roll Express. This time, not quite as big as in the '80s. And then of course you got Tully and Arn feuding with Demolition and the Hart Foundation and WWF. But unfortunately, when Tully doesn't come back to the NWA in '89, when Arn does, it it hurts, uh, you know, uh, the situation because you don't have Tully and Arn again, so you can't really kind of pick up those pieces. And by this time, when Arn does return with Ole to 1989, Flair's a face. That means Arn and Ole's are a face. They're going against Gary Hart and his team of Terry Funk and Great Muta and all those guys. So I don't know how that would have worked out, but if Tully would have come back in '89, they it would have been interesting to see how Tully would have turned out to being a face. That'd have been kind of cool because they would have had to made him a face for a bit because where the storyline went, they took Sting and Flair later on in '90. So that would have been kind of cool to see Tully Blanchard as a good guy for a time being, because he'd been such a masterful heel. People just didn't like him at all. But if he came back with Arn, he'd have been a face. The Four Horsemen would have most likely been Ole as a manager at this point, and Flair, Tully, Arn, and Sting for that brief moment that Sting was a horseman until they turned on him. So that would have been cool. But when they would have turned heel, you might have kept the Midnight Express face and then picked up that feud again between the Midnight Express and Tully and Arn. I think that would have worked out good had that happened. But the original feud between these two teams was phenomenal the way they were getting things set up. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see it. and it had been good to have seen that feud play out through Starcade. I guess maybe giving the Midnight Express the tag team titles in Starcade would have been the solution to kind of end the feud for a bit, but it would have probably picked back up in '89 for Tully and Arn to get the belts back. So anyway, the booking would have been good. You had JJ and Cornette on the outside interfering in the matches back and forth. I don't know, bringing in the original Midnight Express, what they would have done, because I'm sure they would have come in, most likely. So you may bring them in against like the Fantastics. That would have been a kind of a neat feud, possibly. I don't know what they would have done exactly if the original Midnight Express came in and you had this big feud with Tully and Arn in the Midnight. They may have not even brought them in. I don't know. They probably would have. And like I say, the Fantastics would have been a good feud with them. You could have brought the Rock and Roll Express back to a feud with the original Midnight Express. That would have been kind of neat. Of course, the combination of Dennis Condrey and Randy Rose was not the best, but wasn't horrible either. Just that Dennis couldn't stay around long enough. He abandoned the Midnight Express with Bobby Eaton and Jim Cornette, and then he abandoned Randy Rose and Paul E. Dangerously just before a big pay per view. And it was a loser leave town, and why he didn't stay and just lose the match and just leave town had been made sense. But and you could have had Bobby Eaton pin him, pin the old tag partner, and he's out, he's gone. That would have been smart, but still, the original Midnight Express and Midnight Express didn't draw, I don't think, near as much as Tully Arn and the Midnight Express would have. But that's just my take on it. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Until next time, God bless. We'll see you soon.